All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube Live here. I am Ben Arterburn. I'm a former visa officer. I worked as a visa officer around the world in the U.S. consulates and embassies, doing every type of visa imaginable. I was posted in China and Colombia and back in China doing these visas, non-immigrant visas like tourist visas and student visas, temporary work visas like H-1Bs and Ls, and also immigrant visas like spouse visas, parental visas, sibling visas, investor visas, and immigrant visas for aliens of extraordinary ability, every type of visa that you can imagine. So today we're going to do a Q&A. We're going to just go through the comments that we're getting in the chat, and I'm going to answer as many of them as I can for you, trying to be specific for you who are asking the questions, and also trying to be as general as possible so that some of you who might have a similar situation can really learn something from it as well. I do always say to everyone that I'm giving general advice to when I'm doing videos or writing articles, the general advice applies to everyone, but it's also its limitation is that general advice only applies to general situations, and you as an individual have a specific situation. And the advice for you is going to be much more specialized. Maybe you're an exception to the rule. Maybe there's just more details, so different things need to be taken into consideration. So take this general advice, but know that this really can only be applied broadly. For you personally, you do need to address the specifics of your case personally to really know exactly how it's going to affect your application and your visa interview and your chances of getting your visa issued. Okay, so let's start off with some questions. Let's see. Harsh Chaleri says Duolingo is acceptable for USA F1 visa. The visa actually doesn't have any language requirement. There's no language test ever required for an F1 visa. It's that the school will have a language requirement, and they might require the TOEFL. Because of the pandemic, many schools have been accepting Duolingo certificates as evidence because they haven't been able to sit for the TOEFL exam or the TESOL exam. And so, yes, Duolingo has been accepted by schools, but in the visa interview, they're not caring very much about your TOEFL scores. They're mostly concerned with how you actually are able to speak English in your visa interview. Now, everyone that's listening, this is not for every type of visa, but for student visas, if you're going to the US to study in a program that will require you to speak English, if you are unable to speak at least passably in your visa interview, they're going to take that as a sign that you might not be qualified for your academic program, and that maybe you don't intend to actually engage in the academic program, that you're actually intending to do something different once you get to the United States. So you do need to prepare. Obviously, it's a very high stakes situation. People get nervous. You do need to prepare, though, to speak English when you go in for your student visa interview. Okay. Let's see. Let's go for some more questions. How to prepare for an interview for an MBA, and what should be said on why going to the US? Okay, this is a question that many visa applicants, I'm going to say, yeah, they mess up when they answer this question. When they say, "Why'd you choose the USA?" There's no correct answer. There's no right answer or wrong answer to why did you choose the USA. All there is your answer, okay? And your answer needs to be specific to you. If you're not talking about yourself when you answer this question, then you're answering it incorrectly. If you say, because the United States has one of the best educational systems in the world, it's the graduates from the US have the best opportunities to advance their studies and the research system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, these are all facts that you could have found on Wikipedia or on a university's website. My university has a campus of 150 acres and has an endowment of $3 billion, et cetera, and has a student-teacher ratio of 9 to 1. This is all stuff that one could just find on a website. And it also doesn't talk about you. Why is it good for you? The better decision is because the better answer to that question is because this somehow benefits me, right? Because most other countries don't offer scholarships to international students, but I was able to get a scholarship at this university in America, right? That's why it is best for you. So the answer to that question about why the USA, why the school that you chose, your answer needs to pertain to you specifically, not just general points. Okay. Are there any particular points to focus on for a J1 visa, graduate or intern visa, a J1 program for a graduate or an intern? Yes, for J1, in general, you have to overcome 214B, which means they just need to trust you that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. But in addition to that, for a J1, you need to be able to discuss the specifics of the program that you're going to engage in, right? If you're doing it for, if it's for research, you need to have the research plan. You need to know it front to back. You need to be able to talk about it, about your advisor who's going to oversee the research. You need to know everything about that program that you're going to engage in. That's the only thing that's different about it. Let's head on to some more questions. Okay, we have a question from Nigeria. In the EB3 interview, can you be asked about a previously canceled B1, B2 visa? Yes. The EB3 visa is an immigrant visa for anyone who doesn't know. And usually it's for non-skilled workers who are going to work in fields in the US that are relatively low wage. Some examples are janitorial work or food preparation in areas where there just aren't enough workers in the US. Now, this is a visa class that does have a relatively high amount of visa fraud, where people apply for these visas, but then once they get to the US, they actually never show up for the job that they're supposed to show up for. They go and they find another job somewhere else that's going to pay them more, right? And so the main concern that the visa officers have for an EB3 visa is whether or not the visa applicant does intend to go to the US and do the job for which they are being given the visa. If the visa officer doesn't believe that you're going to do that job, and this could be for a number of reasons, you've got family members that all live somewhere else in the US and you could just go get a job, making more money through connections that you have with them, or perhaps the reason might be that you are very overqualified and compensated in your own country. Maybe you're a doctor or an engineer in your own country, and then you want to come to the US and do a janitorial job. They might think that that's not very plausible, that you wouldn't actually do that. So it's a visa class that can be refused quite easily. And having a previously canceled B1, B2 visa, if it was canceled, usually canceled means that something was done, something in your past, in your records, caused them to cancel it, right? So they had a doubt that, or they know something derogatory about your behavior or your use of your visa in the past, and so they've canceled your visa. That 100% makes them trust you less, and will make them trust you less on your EB3 interview. So you do need to be very well prepared. If you go in without preparation, without knowing how specifically you are going to handle talking about whatever happened that caused that B1, B2 visa to be canceled, you are going to have a hard time getting that visa issued. Let's move on to James Singh, who 3 times in a row posted the exact same question, which is not a good thing to do for your visa interview. These types of things, these gimmicks like posting the same question over and over again, these are the types of things that are going to annoy visa officers and get your visa refused. But let's go ahead and read your question here. I got rejected. There were 3 mistakes on my DS-160. Now I'm trying for a summer intake. I have an interview, and I booked appointments as a fresher. Will it create problems? Yes, you have booked an appointment under false pretenses. You have said that you are a fresher, which to anyone out there that's not in India, that means someone who is a first-time applicant, but you have been refused previously. So you have lied on your application. They will know this immediately, that you have applied as a fresher. And now that you are applying again, they're going to view you as someone who is not being honest, and you will not get your visa issued. Let's move on to the next question. I am a 5th-year medical student in Ukraine. I've got one more year left, so I couldn't finish because of the war. Currently, I'm in Germany. Should I apply for a visa from Germany? Yes. I'm very sorry about what's happening right now in your country, and that if you have family members that are still there, I feel for you. My thoughts are with you and your family. You're in Germany right now, you can apply for your visa in Germany. I would recommend Berlin. That is from what I have been told from my contacts. That is where a lot of the processing for people that are coming from Ukraine is being done. The State Department is moving a lot of people around right now. I do know people who I used to work with who are still in the State Department who are being sent over to Poland and to Germany right now to deal with this influx of migrants and refugees who will be applying for U.S. visas. I will tell you, it will be hard to get a visa, and it's because the US laws are slow to change and the regulations are slow to change. The US government has currently not implemented any special program to handle Ukrainians who have fled Ukraine because of the war. And because of the way that 214B, the regulation that governs all visa issuances to non-immigrant visas, is written, if they don't believe that you have a tie outside of the US that you are willing to return to, they are supposed to refuse your visa. That means that if there are applicants from Ukraine who they don't think would return to Ukraine because of the war and the situation right now, then they would be forced by the regulations. They would be guided by the regulations to refuse that visa. I do have some anecdotal evidence, though, of some people that I do know of through some immigration attorneys who have had their visa issued despite having just fled Ukraine into Poland. So there is the aspect of the visa officers using their better nature and their judgment to give the benefit of the doubt to Ukrainian applicants who have said to them, yes, I have fled Ukraine now because of the war, but after the war is done, I will be going back to Ukraine. I'm not abandoning my country. I will go back to Ukraine. And they've had their visa issued. So it is possible to get your visa issued in that situation. Okay, let's move on. The same inquirer says, should they apply in Germany or Poland? There's not enough information yet to know about that. In Warsaw, I know that they have. I don't actually know what language you speak from your name. I'm assuming that you're not actually a Ukrainian national, but you can apply in either place. Okay, double masters. I completed my master's in networking in 2019 from Australia. I want to apply for an F1 visa to the US for a master's in cybersecurity in the fall. How should I justify and answer the question about why a double master's? Anything that is a non-traditional, non-conventional career path or academic path is going to raise the concerns of the visa officers. If you are applying for a second bachelor's degree, a second master's degree, if you have a degree from 10 years ago and you've been working for 10 years and now you want to go back and get another degree, anything that is not the expected career path is going to cause the visa officers to be a little bit more suspicious. And what's a conventional career path? It's basically going to high school, graduating from high school, entering college as an undergrad, university, studying for 4 years as an undergrad, and then going straight into a master's degree, then going straight into a PhD, graduating and working until you retire. And then, yeah, that's your conventional career path that they are most familiar with. That's the career path that they are on. And so they are going, most of them, not all of them. And so that's what they see as something that's a very expected situation. They can put you into a very very neat box where they understand what your decisions are, what your career path will be. So anything that you're doing that's outside of that is going to raise their suspicions. And how do you dispel their suspicions? By giving them details about your plans. If you just say, yes, it's a second master's, I'm going to study it to learn more skills. These answers do nothing to shed light on your situation about why, personally, for you, this is the best decision. What you have to do is enlighten them. You have to make that visa officer understand. That visa officer has to feel like they know why you're doing what you are doing. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to explain why this second master's makes sense for you, right? You got this first master's, but now you're going through a career change, right? There's a better opportunity in a different field. You know, you're being more practical now, and you're looking for a job that's going to be able to get you a better salary. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe Maybe it's that you have your master's degree from your own country, and getting a master's degree from the US is basically the same as going up a different level and getting a PhD. It's going to raise your earning potential by a lot because you're getting a degree from abroad that's viewed as more prestigious, right? Whatever this reason is, you need to make sure that they understand why you're doing this. Just saying double masters raises the suspicions, so you have to meet that raised bar and you have to convince them of what your plans are. Samuel says, I am a Nigerian residing in Nigeria. I do not have any travel history and I want to study for a master's in Luxembourg. Can I apply with my family? Best of luck to you applying for a master's degree in Luxembourg, Samuel. We are US visa officers. We do not know anything about the Luxembourgian visa system, but I do wish you the best of luck. Hello, I am from Azerbaijan, and yesterday from 28 students got refused who had applied J1 visa for work and travel. Some of them say that they were not given a chance to say something. Okay, so I think what you're saying is that many students were refused their J visas for summer work and travel. Yes, that can happen. And it seems like from this experience, we can assume that in Azerbaijan, they have a high bar for issuing summer work and travel visas. Summer work and travel is a J1 visa for the summer where students, full-time students abroad, can apply for this program. They go and they work for an employer for a certain number of months during the summertime. It's meant to give the opportunity to go to the US, earn some money, improve your English skills, maybe travel a little bit to students abroad. In the same way that I've already said multiple times on this live, you're going to think that I'm giving you the same information over and over again. You have to bring your situation to life, right? So these 28 students applied and they were refused without having the chance to say something. There's a difference between being asked the questions that you want to be asked and having the opportunity to say something. You cannot control what questions the visa officer will ask you. You can't control how many questions the visa officer will ask you. However, you can control what you say in response to whatever question they ask is. Let's say that I know that the highlight of my visa application is that my parents own a concrete factory with 600 employees, right? I haven't traveled that much. I'm honestly not a great student, but I've got this. This is all hypothetical. I have this. My family's finances are very strong. Okay. Well, when they ask me, okay, well, what school are you enrolled in, right? Okay, well, I'm going to say, well, I'm enrolled in Johnson Community College. I'm not just going to stop there because that's not my highlight. I'm going to say I'm enrolled in Johnson Community College, but officer, I also wanted to tell you about my family's finances. My parents actually founded a concrete factory that has 600 employees. We're very fortunate. I'm very fortunate. My parents are very successful. Now, they didn't ask you that question, but that information now is in their mind, and they're now looking at you as a very affluent student, which is definitely putting you in a different box in terms of how you're being considered as a visa applicant. Okay, we have more. Okay, we're going to put Mr. James Singh in timeout for posting the same comment far too many times in a row. Let's get to some other questions. Hello there. 5 months ago, I submitted a DS-160 for tourism, but never paid to schedule a visa interview. Now I'm applying for a J1 visa. Will they see the previous DS-160 even if I didn't go for the interview? They can access all of your visa records. All of your interactions with the US immigration system are available to the visa officers when you apply again, okay? You should not think that you're able to submit different information, submit new information that contradicts what you put into a previous application. If someone else prepared a DS-160 for you in the past and was an agent and they put in false information, you will need to be able to explain this if you have an application with significantly different information when you go in for your next visa interview. Unfortunately, there are agents that do that, and it's not really, there's no real way for you to prove that that wasn't you that did it, other than trying to convince the visa officer that that you had nothing to do with it. I know I have a friend personally who this happened to. There are unscrupulous visa agents out there. You need to make sure that everything that's being done on your behalf is under your supervision and control. Don't let anything be submitted without you having the final say so and the final approval of it. Okay, Shuhan says, my question is for F1 category. When the visa officer asks, why the USA? Why do you want to go to the USA? Why do you choose to study in the USA? That's the same question. And the answer is what I said before. The answer has to be personal to you, right? Don't tell me something about the USA, like the US has a top education system in the world. Tell me about what that means to you. If I get a degree from the USA, I'm able to get a much higher income when I go back to my country, right? My brother, my siblings have all gone to the USA for their degrees. And so I feel comfortable going there, right? I've been preparing for the U.S. education system. The education systems in different parts of the world are different, and the U.S. education system is the one that I'm comfortable with. It has to involve you. Your answer has to involve you. Don't just recite facts that anyone could find on a Wikipedia article. You need to be able to talk about why this is the best situation for you. Okay. Ali Khan Accused says, in the USA applied for, I'm sorry, this looks like a little bit of gibberish. We're going to have to skip that one and move on to some other questions. Okay, I'm now going to, okay. I am, just so everyone knows, I am going to put people who post the same comment over and over. I'm going to hide your comments and put you in timeout. And so your questions will not be answered. Because we do want to try to get to as many questions as we can. And we want to give everyone an equal opportunity to get their questions answered. With multiple posts like that, it doesn't help me run through this. This is also a good lesson for applying for your visa. If you try to do things that are very obvious tricks and loopholes, you will not be looked on favorably by the visa officer. And so you have to enter into it as if it is an interpersonal interaction. That is a good point that I do want to make. The entire decision that's going to be made in your visa interview is a personal decision. The visa officer is going to decide if they trust you. All they have to go on when they make that decision is what you write in your DS-160 and what you say to them in your interview. That's all that they can base it on. That's all the information they have. Many people out there think that the U.S. government is keeping all the track of your personal life and everything you're doing, and they have all this data on you before you even show up to your interview. No, they do not. Right? I mean, if you've been arrested, if you're an international criminal, then yes, perhaps they do. But if you're just a regular person, no. You walk in, and the only information that's being considered is what you put in your DS-160 and what you say in your interview, and they have to trust you, right? So you basically need to approach this in the same way that you would approach any interaction with a friend, with an acquaintance, with a colleague, with a family member, with the tenets of honesty, trustworthiness, respect their time, respect their intelligence, respect their intentions. Now, maybe they're not going to be in the best of moods, but they are in complete control of the situation. And that is exactly how you have to approach this interview. So in the same way, that's how we're going about this. A lot of what I have to coach my clients about is what is the concept, right? It's not how do you answer individual questions. It's how do you approach the interview so that regardless of what question you're asked, you know naturally how to answer that question because you're in the right mindset, right? If you have the right mindset and you know the details of your program, your studies, your job, your investment, whatever it is, if you know the information and then you have the right mindset, then the correct answers will come naturally to you. Okay. Okay, Yunus Gassama asks, what's the difference between community colleges and universities in the eyes of a consular officer? That is a very good question. And very simply, a four-year university is looked on much more favorably than a community college. You can get an F visa for a community college. Obviously, this is a qualified purpose of getting an F visa. However, when you apply for a community college, the standards for admission are lower. That means that you haven't already demonstrated these academic credentials, this academic commitment, the time that it would have taken to be dedicated to your studies to be able to get into a better university with the better grades, with the better test scores, with the better TOEFL scores, right? So it's basically it's that you're lacking that vetting, that getting into a four-year university that has admission standards that are higher would naturally already intrinsically present to a visa officer. So when you go to a university, there's also different gradients of universities, right? Let's say I'm going to say Harvard as an example. If you've gotten into Harvard, the visa officer knows that you have some of the highest academic credentials in the world, right? That's a four-year university, but it's also one of the most prestigious in the country and in the world. If you get into, mm, let's say, University of Kentucky, right? If you get into University of Kentucky, this is a four-year university that has admission standards. You do have to meet a certain minimum requirement in order to be accepted to this university, but those requirements are lower than they are for Harvard, right? So while it's better that it's a four-year university, it's still not as good as if you can get into a more renowned, more prestigious, a more elite university. And then going down from there, then you've got a program where it's a community college. Then, and below that on the bottom rung of the ladder are English language programs, because you don't even need to be able to speak English yet to get into them. So you haven't demonstrated any type of this academic commitment that's going to convince the visa officer that you are a qualified visa applicant. Okay, let's move on. Uchiha Itachi says, sir, is it easy to pass US visa for a son of a US citizen? Okay, so general concept here is family members in the US. Family members in the US are ties to the US. If you have a family member in the US, and the closer the family member, the closer the tie, that means that you have some connection to the US that could very plausibly draw you to the US permanently. And the visa officers will view it as such. They will think, okay, well, if you have a parent, for instance, in the US, what's stopping you from wanting to immigrate permanently to the US along with this other family member, right? So you need to be able to very proactively demonstrate why that is not your plan, why what you actually want to do is go to the US temporarily and go back to your home country, especially if it's a visa for a non-immigrant visa. Now, is it easy to pass a US visa for a son of a US citizen? I think maybe you're talking about an immigrant visa, in which case, yes, it's usually quite easy as long as you have the real parental child relationship, which can be confirmed by DNA in the worst case scenario, and then you would get your visa. Let's move on here. Kanwar says, I'm a doctor and went to go to the US for my exam, but my visa got rejected due to a green card petition. Can I still get a tourist visa? This is the same thing with that green card petition. It is probably a family member that's in the US. And the green card petition actually does show that there is a path to immigration, and perhaps the intent, even though you don't personally file that petition for yourself, a family member files it for you. So, yes, you can still get the tourist visa. You have to prove to the next visa officer's satisfaction, though, that you do not intend to stay in the US permanently on that B visa. And the way to do it is going to be to lean into it and say, yes, I have an immigrant petition pending. Now, I'm inventing some situations for you. So this may not be your personal situation, right? Could be different for anyone. But one plausible strategy for someone could be to say, yes, I have an immigrant visa petition pending. My relative filed it for me X number of years ago. And I do plan to use it when it becomes current, but that's in X number of years from now. That's in the future. I'm a doctor. I'm not going to do anything that's below this. I've worked very hard to become a doctor. I want to go and get my USME, I believe it's called, exam pass the certifications in the US. But if I'm in the US without proper documentation, I can't work as a doctor. I want to get my doctor's credentials and I want to be practiced and licensed and practicing. And then in the future, right? So you have to demonstrate this dual intent where, yes, you have that petition that will become what we call current in the future. However, for now, I intend to use this tourist visa as intended, right? Let's move on. Paula says, thank you for the great consultation that she had with Catherine. Hoping to get her visa on the 23rd. Great. I'm glad that you enjoyed your consultation and that you found it very useful. And best of luck to you on the 23rd. Catherine is one of my colleagues at Argo. She's another ex-visa officer who has a lot of experience, who's very good at solving problems for clients and helping them figure out what their strategy needs to be in order to present their credentials best and get their visa issued. Mateus, also a client who had a consultation with us, I believe with Jenna, and asks if we have any further tips for an O1 visa. I'm sure Jenna went over this with you very well. She's very skilled with the aliens of extraordinary ability type visas. The O is for a non-immigrant alien of extraordinary ability. And the main thing in this is that you have to show them, you have to show the visa officers that you indeed have extraordinary qualifications that match what was on the petition that was filed for you, right? They are told the petition's already approved, right? That's approved by USCIS in the US, but then the visa officers are told in the regulations that what they need to do is confirm using their local expertise and their local language skills that all of the information submitted in that petition is indeed true and that you do possess all those credentials. So you need to be prepared. That petition, once you go into that visa interview, it was prepared by lawyers. However, you are the only person who is there at the visa interview. You have to know everything that's in that petition. Just because the lawyers prepared it, now it's your responsibility. You're the only person that can advocate for yourself in your visa interview. Okay. Ishmael Saki says, I got denied in March 9th for an F visa. When is it appropriate for me to reapply for an interview since my school start date is in August? So if your school start date is in August, you can only apply for an F visa 120 days, that's 4 months before your program start date. So August, we're going back July, June, May, April. April 22nd, thereabouts. It's not exactly 120 days, but around April 22nd is when you can apply for your visa for a program start date that's on August 22nd, okay? Now, from April until August, you might be wondering, when should I apply between April and August? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Apply in April, apply in August. I would say, because visa appointments are so hard to come by right now, what you should do is apply as soon as possible, right? Because let's say that, just hypothetically, if you're refused the first time that you apply in April, you want to perhaps have the opportunity to apply again, right? So you want to apply as soon as possible. Many people ask, if you've been refused a visa, how long do you have to wait to apply again? The answer is you do not have to wait to apply again. You can apply immediately. The visa officers and the visa managers and the consular sections will tell applicants, you need to wait until something has changed in your situation. When you go in for a visa interview after you've been refused, they will ask that question, what has changed since your previous interview? However, that really is self-serving for them because they don't want to have to interview the same people over and over again. They're trying to make it so that someone who they've refused once does not apply again, because they don't want to have that extra workload coming in, right? And they do want to be consistent in their decisions. However, they have a conflicting goal with that, is in that they also want their decisions to be accurate, and they do make inaccurate decisions, right? That's, I mean, they themselves would have to admit this because they refuse visas and then they issue visas, right? Which is just an admission that the system is not perfect. It's based on individuals' judgments, and their judgment can be flawed, right? So if your visa has been refused and you know that you do have the true, honest intent to use that visa correctly, you do not have to wait any time at all to apply again. What you do need is a strategy for when you go in the next time to apply for your visa, how you are going to avoid getting the same result that you did the last time. If you go in without any change in your strategy, and when I say a change in strategy, I do not mean filling out the DS-160 differently, giving different information, changing schools, changing programs, right? No, I mean your strategy in terms of how you are going to represent yourself, your finances, your plans, your ties in your visa interview. That's what you need a strategy for. When you're refused a visa, it's you who are refused. They have not refused the university that you applied for. They did not refuse your major. They did not refuse your program start date. They refused you. And so it's you who needs a different strategy. You can go in with the same plan, the same university, the same program start date, the same scholarship, everything. But if your strategy is different in the interview, the way that you're going to get them to view you as a visa applicant is different. How you're going to present yourself and your credentials is different. That's what needs to change when you go in for that next interview. Okay, let's move on to another question. Farouk says, does the visa officer look at the social media of a visa applicant? The answer to that is yes, they can. In the same way that you can walk in with a bunch of documents that you've prepared for your interview, and they may want to look at them, but then oftentimes they'll say, no, I don't want to see your documents. I don't want to see your bank statements, your housing deeds, your academic records. I don't want to see any of it. In the same way, they don't have to look at any of your social media. But if they want to, yes, they can review your social media. Miss Pedia says, can I say that my parents will only fund my tuition, where my sibling will provide the remaining expenses? In these cases, do I need to have proof of financial support during a visa interview? This brings up the topic of sponsors. Sponsors, as they are requested on your DS-160 or on your I-20, are not as important as the word. It's not as strict of a role as many visa applicants seem to interpret it as. Let me put that into other terms. Many visa applicants think that, okay, you need to choose one sponsor. Who do I choose? My father or my uncle or my mother or my or myself? Who should I choose as my sponsor to put on my visa application? Because if it's one, maybe it's better than the other. You do have to put a name, right? And especially when you're doing your I-20, like the source of these funds is important. However, in the visa interview, it's your entire financial situation that's important. Okay, they do not care if it's you, your father, or your mother who's the sponsor, right? What they care about is your entire financial situation. That's what you need to prepare to present to them. When they ask you the question, how are you going to pay for this? The correct answer is not, my uncle is my sponsor. Okay, well, how's your uncle going to pay for it? Don't make them ask that obvious next question. Give them the information that they need. When they ask who's going to pay for your education, give them the information they need, which is, do you have the resources to pay for this? How do I know you have the resources to pay for this? How can I trust you? Why would the person who's going to pay for this for you, right? These are the things that you should answer preemptively without making them have to ask this question as a follow-up, okay? continuing on. I'm going to go down to the bottom now. We're over halfway through. I'm going to go to the bottom and then work my way back up so that if there are people that have joined later on, and I'm going to, so Hemant Karki, I'm going to put you in timeout, and it's because you've posted the same post over and over again. Please, everyone, do not post the same question over and over again. You will not get your question answered. Okay. Rudolph Serrano, can I change my visa class upon the interview? I selected B1, B2 visa when I typed B2 only. There's honestly, for most people's purposes, there's no difference between a B1, B2 and a B1 or just a B2. It's the same thing. You need to just go into the visa interview. B1, B2 is actually the best one to select when you're applying because it covers everything, unless you're doing some very exotic type activity where you're getting like a B1 in lieu of H1B visa, then you don't need anything specific like that. You can just get a B1, B2. Okay. Amazon counselors. Here's your question. Can a visa officer listen to my 2-minute interesting answer or cut me down? Of course, yes. A visa officer can interrupt you anytime they want. Do not be dissuaded from giving your information. You do have to stop if they ask you to stop, right? But when they ask you another question, then you have another chance to continue giving them information, and you should continue to give them the information that you know is important. Vishal says, I had the interview twice with the same university and got rejected. Should I change the university and program or have a major change? I want to tell you again, they're not refusing your university and your major. They're refusing you. So if you just change the university and the major, that doesn't mean that, okay, now it's all good. There's no list of, okay, we approve these universities and we refuse these. We approve these majors, we refuse these. No. However, here's a caveat. Let's say that you're applying to community college and you've been refused, and then you get into a renowned 4-year university, University of Michigan, for instance. Yes, then if you change your I-20 and you show that you've been accepted into one of these more prestigious, more elite, more renowned, more respected universities, then yes, you'll have a much better chance of getting your visa issued if you make that change. But a change, let's call it a lateral change from one program, from industrial engineering to systems engineering, it's not gonna affect your visa interview. Let's say that you go from University of Missouri to University of Tennessee. No, they're both big state schools. That's not really changing anything. You're not going to be able to fish for a different answer by making those changes. My father is retired and he will be sponsoring my education. Is this a negative? No, it is not a negative. But I think you already know what I'm going to tell you. You have to explain the situation. You explain the situation, and that is what's going to get the visa officer to trust you, to feel like they know what's going on in your situation, to feel like they know why they should feel confident about issuing your visa. Okay, Jonathan. Jonathan says, I'm Nigerian and I want to apply for undergrad in the US, though I finished high school in 2015. So you've got a gap. You've got a gap between your previous studies and your current plan. That is what we call a non-traditional student. I've gone over this. It's what we call a non-traditional student. It's what's going to make the visa officers more suspicious from the very beginning. And so you need to know that you will have to convince them of your intent. Why does your plan make sense, right? You're not going to be as easy to get a visa as someone who's, straight out of high school going to college, straight out of college going to a master's. You're going to need to explain why going back to school after 7 years is a good idea, okay? Once again, let me remind you, please do not post your question multiple times. It will not be answered. That is going to be considered negative information, and it will preclude you from having your question answered live on YouTube. Okay, moving back. Does SAT or scholarship matter? asks Subaru Chan. The SAT is not something that I or any visa officers that I know of would ask for many times. However, scholarships, yes. Having a scholarship shows, first of all, academic excellence, right? If this is a merit-based scholarship, which is a good thing for getting your visa. It also shows proof of being able to pay for your studies, right? It also shows commitment to actually engaging in the studies that you say you're planning to engage in, right? If you've gone the extra mile, gone to the extra effort to apply for scholarships, that's something that someone who is just putting together a ramshackle application for a university to be able to get to the US to engage in unauthorized work would not do. So having that scholarship is great all around. Scholarships are great evidence in favor of issuing a student's visa. Okay, someone asks a very good question. What is the cause of the DS 5535? Maybe many of you have heard of this. People are asked to fill out a form or to answer a questionnaire that then is put into this form. You might not be told specifically that you're being given the DS 5535. The DS 5535, you can search for it in Google and you can see what this form is and you can read about what the background of it is. It is the extreme vetting that was implemented a few years ago. Any visa officer for any case can request that the applicant fill out the DS 5535, which is going to then cause a check to be done just to verify that you are not a person that should not be given a visa for any number of reasons, mostly security related. This is something that you cannot do, honestly, very much to avoid. Once it has been requested, all you can do is submit the information as thoroughly and as quickly as possible in order to start the check and then get the result back as soon as possible. It does take a long time. There are people that I've heard of who have been waiting for upwards of 6 months for this check to come back, and there's nothing that can be done to speed it up. The only thing that can be done to help you avoid this check is if you give as much thorough, complete information to the visa officer during the interview as possible. Because it can be a lack of information that causes them to want to request a DS 5535. If they feel like they have thorough, complete information from you, and then they feel like they don't need to request this, then you could possibly avoid it, right? So all you can do with regards to that is provide as much information as you can so that that information can perhaps prove to the visa officer that they do not need to request that form with regards to your application. Pablo asks, why do visa officers interrupt when someone is talking? And the answer to this is because they're in a hurry. They don't have much time. They're trying to go as fast as they can. They don't have the time to give you 20 minutes to speak during your visa interview. They are trying to get through visa applicants one every 2 minutes. And so they think that they want to get certain pieces of information from you to then make their decision. And if you're giving them information that isn't relevant to that, then they'll interrupt you and ask you a different question. That doesn't mean that you should just give up and say, well, I guess I can't tell them my information. No, they'll ask another question, hopefully, and you'll be able to answer that question. And you can pivot your answer towards giving the information that you know is the best supportive information that will help you get your visa issued. Okay, Sir says that CBP canceled his visa. Can you get it back? A lot of people have this issue where they arrive in the US and then they are removed from the US by CBP. They may pull you off to a room where they then interrogate you. They ask you a lot of questions. They may confiscate your electronic devices and search through them. There are different ways that they can then deny your entry into the US. One way is that they can allow you to withdraw your application for admission, which means that they found no solid evidence that you did not that you were intending to break the law. However, they are suspicious of you, and so they give you the opportunity to withdraw your application, which means saying, okay, I don't want to enter the US. Then your visa is canceled, you're sent back to your home country, but you don't have a ban. You can reapply for a visa, and there's no ban. The visa officer can just issue your visa outright if they so decide to. However, in other instances, they do apply a 5-year ban. That's when they don't give you the option to withdraw your application for admission, and that results in expedited removal and a 5-year ban on being able to re-enter the US. To be able to enter the US earlier than that 5 years, before that 5 years has expired, you do have to get a waiver. For a non-immigrant visa, you have to get a waiver, and for a immigrant visa, you have to get an I-212. You have to submit the I-212, which is usually going to be submitted by a lawyer on your behalf as consent to reapply before you're able to get another visa issued. Community asks, do they ask why you were rejected earlier? They usually will not ask why you were rejected for a visa because they know that visa applicants do not know why they are rejected 214B. They know that they don't tell them this is the reason you were refused. If your visa was revoked or canceled by CBP or something like that, then they will ask. It's very specific to individual situations. So that's one where you need to know, you would need to get the professional help, which we can provide to figure out exactly what you need to say in response to having something happen previously, like a rejection. I got rejected because of a spelling error on my DS-160. I doubt that is true. If you just misspelled something on your DS-160, that is usually not usually, that would never be the sole reason why a visa officer would refuse a visa. However, you say in your bank statement, so if there was a spelling error on your bank statement, that would definitely make a visa officer consider refusing your visa because banks do not usually misspell words on their statements. And so a misspelling on a bank statement would make a visa officer suspect that perhaps that bank statement was fraudulent, counterfeit, falsified. Bahram Sire says, why after a rejection of the visa does the officer not share the main reason? Just like for the other reason why I said why they interrupt you, because they don't have time. They don't have the time or the obligation to tell you why. Also, the why would not be satisfactory to you. They would tell you, because I just don't believe you. And then what would you say, right? So they will never tell you the main reason. I and my colleagues who have done tens of thousands of visa interviews, we've done cumulatively, all of the visa officers that work with Argo, the ex-visa officers, have done over 1 million visa interviews. Our experience doing this for years and collectively, when we hear what happened during your visa interview, what questions were asked, how you answered, and what the content of your visa application and your visa application history is, we know nearly immediately with a high degree of accuracy what the reason was that was in the visa officer's head without them ever having told you. We're just relying on our intuitive knowledge of how this process works, how the regulations work, and most importantly, how visa officers think in order to deduce what the reason was for your refusal. My F1 Gita says my F1 visa was denied 2 months ago on a 214B. What changes should I make? And can I book the interview as a fresher? No, you cannot book it as a fresher. If they check, they will refuse you for disingenuously applying as a fresher despite not being a fresher. This should be very clear to everyone, right? If you do anything that is inaccurate or untruthful and the visa officer knows about it, they will not believe anything else that you tell them, right? So if you've been refused and then you apply as a fresher, the visa officer will think, this is a dishonest person. I cannot believe anything that they're going to tell me, and they will refuse you, right? This should be very clear to everyone, right? This is just basic interpersonal skills, right? Basic interpersonal skills apply to visa interviews. We have a question here saying, my husband is on an H-1B and I'm applying for an F-1 visa. Will that affect my visa acceptance? The answer is yes. However, it's not necessarily going to affect it in positively or negatively. It definitely will affect it. The way you present this is going to determine whether it's going to be positive, a net positive, or a net negative in its effect on your visa application. One, you have your closest family member in the US. That's a tie to the US. However, they're there on a valid legal visa, and ostensibly with an H-1B, they're very highly skilled, right? So you can present this in such a way that you're presenting yourself as a very successful, qualified, um, law-abiding couple who's going to the U.S., right? So you can present that in a way that it's going to help you. I'm looking at a lot of questions that are similar to ones I've already answered, like, what do you do if you have a gap? Medrine says, how can one avoid anxiety during the interview? It's a very good question. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, and so I don't think I'm the best person to tell you how to avoid anxiety. However, I can tell you, just in the context of a visa interview, it is very common for people to be nervous and anxious about their visa interview because it is such an important interview, and the result of it is going to affect your entire life if you're going for studies or a job. And so it is understandable that you will be nervous. Don't get mad at yourself for being nervous, right? Uh, for me, what would work is thinking that, okay, I'm going to be nervous. I already know. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not going to be angry at myself for getting nervous. I'm not going to be disappointed in myself. I know I'll probably feel a little bit nervous. And when I feel nervous, I'm just going to take a moment, acknowledge that I'm feeling nervous, but that's okay. Take a deep breath, and then if I need to, ask the officer to repeat their question. Maybe even I should say, I'm sorry, I'm kind of nervous. Could you repeat your question to me? Right. The visa officers know that the visa applicants are nervous, um, and so it's not the end of the world if you're nervous. But definitely be prepared to be nervous, even if you're not normally a nervous person. When you do get into a situation like that, where it's high stakes and it's happening very rapidly, it can be more nervous than you might expect. And let's take one more question. I'm going to look here, find us a good one to finish up on. One more question. We're looking here. We're going to find one. Amazon counselors, you've continued to do this entire time. You are in timeout for that. Okay, here's a good one. My next interview is Monday. Who's Michael? I know Michael. My next interview is Monday. What do I expect after two refusals? After you've been refused a visa once, what can you expect going in with a prior refusal? It's very important that you know that you're starting off with a strike against you. What does that mean? You're starting off with negative information against you in your visa interview. Why? Why is that? It's because that previous refusal is on your visa record. The visa officer will open your case and they will see that you were refused previously. This is going to affect how they're going to think about you, right? This is going to affect their judgment of you, their initial impression of you, and so you're going to have to fight an uphill battle to get them to think about you positively, right? That's why when I prepare my clients, I always teach them that after you've been refused, the first thing that you say is the most important. You have to say something that gets the visa officer to reconsider your case from a different perspective, even though they know that their colleague refused you previously. That's the most important thing that you can do if you've been previously refused. All right, that's going to be it for today, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I love that we got so many participants and so many questions today. If you've got a visa interview coming up and you want help and you want to know how your individual situation should be best handled, what your strategy should be, reach out to us. Send us an email, send us a message. Our email is hello@argovisa.com. Send us a message on social media. Comment on this video afterwards. We get to those. We try to answer everyone's questions individually, given the very minute amount of information that we're actually able to consider. If you want real, comprehensive help, book a consultation with us. I help my clients one-on-one. I have colleagues that speak 15 different languages and have worked all over the world in 35 different countries. We have experience with whatever your situation is, and we can help you get your visa. Everyone, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye.